So we are on DAF Samech Ches in NEDARIM. Just a reminder, the shir on Sunday and Monday will be at 8:45 because Monday is a national holiday or a statutory holiday, whatever that means. Sunday and Monday the shir will be at 8:45. For those Americans who want to have an earlier shir, that's fine as well. So we said yesterday, 8:45, Monday's a holiday.
No, 7:15?
7:15 and 8:45, I'm sorry. I figured everybody here is an 8:45er, but 7:15 as well, yes. Can you just shut the door, please? Thank you. So yesterday we were discussing these, right? We were discussing these psukim over here, and we said that there are three passages. One by a woman who is a nara beveis avia, father can be meifir. One, the other extreme, who is married, whether it's a nara, bageres, whatever, married, and the husband can be meifir. And we said the second passage, the middle passage, as we came out in the maskana, middle passage is a nara miurasa, which means a nara or a ketana who is miurasa, who is engaged. And in that case, in order to be made for the nedarim, both the husband and the baal, both the husband, the baal, and the father need to be meifir. And if one of them is not meifir, so then it would not be meifir. Chaim. It's not vodka. Tebei Rabbi Yishmael Tana. So the house of Rabbi Yishmael learned. So what did they learn? Tebei Rabbi Yishmael Tana. If you look at the psukim, so we left one thing out. At the end of the third paragraph, 1, 2, 3 passages, at the very end of the psukim it says, Eila hachukim asher tzivo Hashem es Moshe bein ish liishto. These are the chukim that the Kadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe between an ish v'ishto, bein av libito, between a father and a daughter, binureha beis avia. Why she is a nara beveis avia. So debei Rabbi Yishmael Tana, debei Rabbi Yishmael learn that the commandment or that the rule that a nara hamiurasa, so then you need the father and the husband in order to be made for the nedarim, is not learned from the second passage, which we thought it was as yesterday. He argues and says it's actually learned from this last pasuk. Bein ish liishto bein av levito. Mikan lenara hamiurasa she'avia ubala meifirin nidareha. Look at the round on the top of the page. Dimashmale de binara hamiurasa Aryai. How do we know we're dealing with a nara hamiurasa? Midichsiv bahu, because it says in the pasuk binureha beis avia. It says binureha beis avia umidasamach av lebito behadei ish. And since it talks about ish liishto ben av lebito, it clearly needs to be talking about not just a regular nara beis avia, because if there's no husband involved or husband to be involved, then what's it talking about? Bein ish liishto. Therefore, since it says bein ish liishto ben av lebito binureha beis avia, it means a nara miuras, and it's saying that you need both the ish and the av. Mashma di avu ba meifir nidareha. That's where Debei Rabbi Yishmael learns. Obviously, we're going to have to figure out now. Ulatana Debei Rabbi Yishmael says in Gemara, Im hayo tiel ish ma'avidlei. So then, what is this second passage which we said? Im hayo tiel ish. The first passage, nara in her house. So the last passage, once she gets married. Middle passage, which we thought was a nara miurasa. So if you're telling me now that we're learning nara miurasa from the end of the psukim, the recap basically, then what's this second passage talking about? You already proved it can be talking about nisuin. So what exactly is the second passage of Im hayo tiel ish, that then it can be meifir? So what's that talking about? So the Gemara says, ish my avidlei. So the Gemara says, mokim li'idoch de Rabba. And this is where you have to change the girsa. It's the other thing of Rabbi. Why Rabbi used im hayotiel ish to tell me this rule. Mikal l'nara masa shavio bala meifir nidareha. However, the Debei Rabbi Yishmael already knows that from the end, or will know that from the end. So they learn it for the other rule of Rabbi. What's the other learn of Rabbi? Look at the Ran. Ran says, the Amar lekaman, as we say later on Ayin Amad Aleph, makish kodmei havaya shniya lekodmei havaya rishona. That the fact that it says, what is he working off of? It could have said in the pasuk, v'im haya leish, if she marries a man, or if she's engaged to a man, haya, kedushin. What does the pasuk say? V'im hayo tihiyeh leish. This double lashon of hayo tihiyeh. So says the Ran, what it's talking about, according to Rabbi Yishmael, is the case that Ayin Amad Aleph. What's the case in Ayin Amad Aleph? The case in Ayin Amad Aleph compares the second kedushin to the first kedushin. What happens? So the woman becomes an arusa. She's a nara. So her father can be made for the nedarim. Now she becomes an arusa. Now the father can be made for her nedarim along with the husband to be. Now the husband to be dies or divorces her. Again, so once you're an arusa, you need to get a regular get. So now he dies or he divorces her. So now the question becomes, so does the father now regain his ability to go ahead and to be mefer the nedarim. So what they learn, what Rabbi learns, when we say mokim le'idach de Rabbi, what Rabbi learns is that just like prior to the first kedushin, the father can be mefer alone without the husband to be, because there is no husband to be. Then after the kedushin, and now the husband to be is no longer in the picture because he divorced her or he died, now the father can once again be mefer the nedarim of his daughters, who is Nara, who is now single again. That's where Rabbi learns. However, we're saying that Tana de Rabbi Yishmael, where do they learn this from? So Rabbi learns it from somewhere else. Where does Tana de Rabbi Yishmael learn it from? They learn it from this pasuk, V'im hayoti ish. So when I asked you, according to the Rabbi Yishmael, what are you doing with all these passages now? Passage number 1, Nara in her father's house. Passage number 3, Nara when she gets married. Passage number 4, i.e. the recap, Nara, Hamu, Rasa, Baal, and the father can be mefer. They have to be mefer together because initially shto ben av lebito. What do you do with passage number 2, V'im hayoti ish? That passage is telling me hayotia, that if in this specific case where the daughter goes ahead and she's divorced from kedushin, so now the father can be made for the nedarim as well. V'Rabba hai detani debei Rabbi Yishmael mayavidlei. So now Rabba used 1, 2, and 3 for those 3 cases, but now Rabba has the last thing. Rabbi has the recap. What is he going to do with that recap, which Rabbi Yishmael used to learn that Nara Murasa needs both? So my avidlei. So V'Rabba hai detani debei Rav Rabbi Yishmael mayavidlei. Mi BAYT lei lomar shehabal meifir nedarim shebeino lebeina. Okay, very interesting. I actually skipped for a second the last part of the Ran. V'Rabba svir lehu detarti shmas mina. Ikar kral lenara mirasa davio bala meifir nedarim v'taryan havayosli kushe v'tavran havayosli kushe shniya l'rishon. He's just telling me that v'imhayotiel ish. We said that Rabbi Yishmael learns the second passage is telling me this specific case. What is Rabba going to do? Rabba actually learns the second passage for this specific case, imhayotia, but he also learns it for the regular case of a nara mirasa. He basically double dips. So at the end of the day, though, Rabba has this last recap available. So he uses their last recap to tell us that a Baal, when he's mefer the nedarim, he's only mefer nedarim beino lebeina. What does that mean? Look at the Ran, the second wide line on the left. Lomar shabal mefer nedarim shebeino lebeina. Din nidre inoi nefesh behed yaksiv. Because we know that nidre inoi nefesh already is written, because when it talks about a husband being mefer in these passages before, and it says kol neder v'chol shuas isur la'anos nefesh. Any neder that a wife takes that is a personal affliction, I will not eat. So then the husband can be made for those nedarim. Ubein ishli ishto. So now what do you need the last psukim for, says Rabba? You need the last psukim bein ishli ishto not to tell me nara meresa. We already know that from paragraph number 2. What do you need bein ishli ishto to tell me? It's durchei ledvarim shebeino lebeino lekaman b'idach perkin mefurash mahi. Later on in the psukim, later on in the parak, it's going to explain. But the psukim originally gave the husband the right to revoke only things that are inoi nefesh, things that are la'anos nefesh, personal affliction. This gives the right, it basically enhances the husband's right to go ahead and revoke things that are even not for personal affliction, things that are between the two of them. Now again, later on we're going to detail exactly what the difference between personal affliction and things that are not personal affliction but affect him. But at the end of the day, what this pasuk is doing according to Rabbah is it's extending the fact that the husband can now be mefer nedarim not only by things that are la'anos nafesh, like the psukim mentioned before, not only personal affliction, but things that are also not personal affliction but affect the two of them. Fine. So now I have the question. Litana debei Rabbi Yishmael devarim shebeino lebeina minale. So according to the Rabbi Yishmael, if you tell me that this last recap is teaching me Nara Mirasa, you need the Baal and the husband, so the Baal and the father. So where do you know from Rabbi Yishmael that a husband can actually go ahead and be made for not only by Yinoi Nefesh, but things that are Beino Lebeina? Ve'efsher detarte yolef mina. So that's what he's saying. Just like Rabbi learned two things from the second paragraph, V'im hayutia le'ish, he learned the fact of this case where the girl gets divorced or the husband dies, and now the father can once again do hatara, hafara, and at the same token he learns from the same passage that a nara meurasa needs the father and the husband. So Rabbi Shmuel does the same thing with the last pasuk. With the last pasuk, he learns both things. He learns it bein ish lishto ben av lebito. He learns both things from that last pasuk. Fine. V'chihechi, this is a chiddush of the Ran. V'chihechi de baal eino mefer benidrei ishto. Because again, the psukim are only talking about the baal now. We don't know about a father. So if I ask you now, can a father be made for every neder, or can a father only be made for nedarim of inoi nefesh, or can a father be only made for nedarim that are beino levena? We don't know. So the Ran says a chiddush and says, once we know now that a husband which says la nos nefesh, that he could do inoi nefesh, and now we're adding that a husband can also do things beino levena, the Ran extends it and says that it's the same din by a father as well. This is the Ran's opinion. V'chihechi de baal eino mefer benidrei ishto el nedarim sheyesh b'hem inoi udvarim shebeino levena hachanami av eino mefer benidrei bito el elu bilvad. That's the Ran's chiddush, and that's what the Ran says, that we extend it to a father as well. Fine. Ibayilahu. We have a kasha. Now that we've established, however you want to learn, either like Rabbi Yishmael or like Rabbi, however you want to learn, everybody agrees that a nara hami'urasa, so we need the father and the husband in order to be made for the nedarim. Now the Gemara is going to ask, what happens if one of them is made for the neder and the other one is not? So what happens? You need both in order to be made for it. So let's see the Gemara. Ibayilahu. Baal migaz gayis, and the Ran clearly points out that when it gives the Baal, it's just using the Baal as an example. It would be the same din if it was the husband, if it was the father who went ahead and he was made for the neder and not the Baal. Baal megaz gayis, does he cut the neder, o maklish kalish, or does he weaken the neder? Okay, let's see the Ran. Klomar, Arash she'eno mefer ela b'shut fel da'av, kishe mefer chelko migaz gayis, when the Arash is mefer his half, so he cuts it. Kolomar shechote chatzi haneder legamri mevatlo. He basically gets rid of 50% of the neder. V'chatzi v'acher nishar chazak kebatchila v'lo iklish leklal. That means one hand is that he basically, if you have 100% neder with the two of them, we're in the Ran, so you cut it in half. It's the third wide line in the Ran on the bottom. And if you cut it in half, so now you have 50% of the neder remaining. O miklash kalish, or you weaken it. Delo nema tichta chatzi haneder de labatala hu palga ve'idach palga to the kidekai kai. It's not that you have 50 full points remaining of the neder. What do you have? Ela ba'afaras ha'aras mekalish hu dekalish le'kule neder. You have a weakened 100%. So either you have 50% which is nice and strong, or you have 100% which is weak. And we could hear the difference between the two of them. Udekami ba'arle ba'aras hu adin ba'av. This is where he said it would be the same kasha by an av. V'chad minayu nugget. So do we cut it and now you only have 50% of the neder remaining, or is it 100% of the neder still remaining? It's just a weakened 100%. So you'll say to me, come on, what's the difference? Heicha kami bayalan kilomar lemay nafkamina, says the Ran. What's the nafkamina if it's cut in half or if it's weakened? Who really cares? Kigon denadra mitrain zitin. I'll tell you the difference. It's that she goes ahead and she takes a neder that she won't eat 2 kizaisim of cholent. Vishama aris v'heferla. And the aris hears, and the aris is meifir the neder. You got to eat the cholent. V'achalton. And now she goes ahead and she eats the 2 kizaisim of cholent. So what happens over here? Well, iyamrinan migaz guy is if you say that it was cut in half, so lakia, she gets malchus. Why? Says the Ran. 5th line from the wide. I amar migas gayis lakia dinehi de ba'afaras aras paka iser dechad zeta. She took a neder not to eat 2 zaysim of cholent. So when the aras is meifir his half of the neder, now she's only usher to eat 1 kazayis. Idach kidekai kai v'laki aleh. But now that she ate 2 kizaisim of cholent, so she definitely ate the kizayis of, she ate at least the 1 kizayis. So somebody asked me before, does she have to eat 2 kizaisim? The answer is yes. Because if she only eats 1 kizayis of cholent, let's say there's just a thing of 2 kizaisim of cholent here, and she takes a neder not to eat it, so if she would eat 1 kizayis, you can argue, no, that's the kizayis that the Arush said is actually mutter. But now when she eats the whole 2 kizaisim, so even though we cut it in half, so what happens now? Lamai says she wasn't over the 50%, she wasn't over the 1 kizayis that she took. One of the 2 kizaisim was meifir, but the other kizayis was still not meifir. When she ate 2 kizaisim, within those 2 kizaisim was the kizayis that wasn't meifir. She ate the cholent that she took a neder that she wouldn't eat, and therefore she gets malchus like any other neder. If it was 1 kizayis total, and it was half and half, so then seemingly that wouldn't be the din. Because once you're meifir half of a kizayis, if you only have a chatzi shir left, half of a shir, so then when you ate the chatzi shir, you wouldn't necessarily be over the malchus.
Didn't we learn before that neder should be kula?
That's an interesting right. So it seems like there's an exception suggestion here. It sounds like if I take a neder over a bunch of people, like he's pointing out, that if you take a neder with a bunch of people, so then if you get one person matir, so then all of them. It sounds like this is a special din here because the Torah is telling us dafka that you need the Baal and the father. So it's saying you might say you need both of them. So that's an interesting suggestion. So what's the difference if we weaken it now? Well, now I understand. Back in the Gemara, Isura ba'almahu, says the Ran, V'yamard maklish kalish, leka malkus, tehal kalish lekule nidra v'leka ele Isura ba'alma. It's not that I took and made 50% okay and 50% not okay, so now I still have a full kazayis. That's also when I eat that kazayis, it's like I ate, it's basically like I took a neder on one kazayis and I was over the neder. When I took the neder and one of them was made for it, it's not that it was made for half. It was that it was maklish kalish, is that it took the entire neder going from an isser that if I eat it I get malkus, to an isser if I eat it I just get an isser lav. And therefore it went and it basically lowered the punishment. So it's either a matter of lowering the amount that I have to eat. If it just lowers the amount that I have to eat, if I still eat that kazayis I get a full punishment. Or according to the second one, miklash kalish, that it makes it weaker, so it takes it from being an isser which will get malkus to an isser that doesn't get malkus. Lamaisa, when I eat the two kazayis, I don't care whose kazayis I ate, lamaisa I was over the neder. I was maybe over even both nedarim, because again I was over the full neder, the two kazayis, but who cares? At the end of the day, since half of it was Mayfair, so it was miklash kalish, and I only get the isser of the isser, but I don't get an actual malkus.
In the weakened case, even if you eat just a little bit, you're chayiv that weakened punishment.
In the weakened case, again, you would probably still have to eat a shear. You still have to probably eat at least one kazayis. But once you would eat one kazayis, so you would actually go ahead and get only the isser. Fine. Good? Mai. Okay, not so good. Going forward. Mai. So what's the din over here? So we're not going to actually give an answer. One of the nice things about not doing Daf Yomi every day is that sometimes when it's a hard Gemara, I can leave it for the next person, at least for one day. So you always hope that Shabbos is going to be the hardest Daf of the week if you're not giving it on Shabbos. So Mai. So we're not going to give the answer. We're not going to give the answer on. We're not going to give the answer to this question today, but we are going to bring a separate brisa, which is quite complicated. We're not going to see the entire round on the next page, but we'll try to say some of it outside. So Mai, what's the din? So in order to bring the din in this case, which we're not going to answer today, so we're going to bring a different brisa. And this brisa is going on a Mishnah. There's a very good, for those that have the art scroll, they're thinking like another daf or two, or another page or two, there's a very good diagram which sort of sums up everything that we're about to say. So the Mishnah on 70a, the Mishnah on Ayin Amad Aleph, says the following, and we're not going to quote it right now, I'm just going to say it outside. Nara ha-mi'urasa. If you have a Nara ha-mi'urasa, we said that you need the Baal and the Av in order to be made for the neder. Now let's say the father dies. So if the father dies, so it says over there, and the Gemara explains the reason for the chiluk. Again, the Gemara there on Ayin and Aleph says, if the father dies, says the Mishnah, then the right to revoke does not fall to the husband. So again, the father and the husband need to revoke the Nara Mirasa's neder. If the father dies, then the right to revoke does not fall to the husband. He can no longer revoke the neder by himself. Sorry, nothing we could do. The father is dead. If, however, the husband dies, so now the right to revoke falls to the father, and now the father by himself, once the husband is dead, the father by himself can revoke the neder. So again, father by himself, and it makes sense if we just think about it. The father had the right beforehand, just in pure logic. Father had the right before they got engaged. Now the father, quote unquote, continues the right even without the husband. But the husband is new on the scene, so he needs the father. So again, husband cannot do it without the father, but father can do it if the husband dies. That's what the Mishnah says. The Gemara explains the reason. This brisa elaborates 5 different cases on this case of the Mishnah of the father and husband dying. Mai tashma. So here's the brisa. Where do we say, what's the case where we said again that if the Baal dies, so then the right of first refusal, the right to be Mayfair, transfers to the Av. The right never transfers to the husband if the father dies, but if the husband dies, so then the right transfers to the Av. Where does that apply? Case number 1. Bisman shelo shama ha-Baal kodem sheyamus. If the Baal never heard about the neder before he died, and then he died. O sheshama, we need to change it to the bach here. O sheshama on the top right. O sheshama vehefer, or the husband in fact heard and he did hafara. O sheshama vishasak umeis bo bayom, or the husband heard and he was quiet and he died that day. Why do you have to die that day? Because the whole point here is that we're trying to find cases where he wasn't making the neder. Because again, if the husband would have gone, as the Gemara is about to say, if the husband, when he found out before he died, if he would have gone and said, I am making this neder, or if he didn't say anything and he went to sleep that night and he woke up the next morning, so when he wakes up the next morning, what happens? When he wakes up the next morning, we say automatically it's make him, so it's either aggressively, either he does something and he's making it by saying it's make him, or it can be passively make him, it can be passively confirmed. If he just hears about it, is shasuk, then we say the next day, because he has to do it that day, biyom shamo, says the pasuk. So either one of those two, if he's actively making it or he's passively making it by not saying anything, so then it's make him, and then there's nothing that the father can do, even if the husband now dies. But in these cases, where do we see that the father has the ability to do it? In these three cases, where the husband either did not hear about the vow, or he heard about the vow and he himself already did his job to revoke it, or he heard about it and he was silent, but he didn't die the next day, he died that day. In all of these cases, the right to now revoke it falls back to the father alone, and if he revokes it, so then it's actually revoked. Zohi sheshaninu meisabal nitrokna rishus la'av. Avalim shama v'kiyim, as I mentioned, if the husband hears about it and he's mekayim it actively, o sheshama v'shasak umeis biyom shela acharav, or he goes ahead and hears about it and he's quiet and then he dies the next day, ein yachol lahafer. So now, in that case, even the father can't be mefer, because lamaisa, once the husband was making it, now that he dies, it's too late, and now the father can't be mefer it. Case number 2. Shama avia v'hefila. The father hears and he's meifir. V'lo hispik Baal lishmoa at shemeis ha'av. And the Baal didn't hear it until the Av died. And again, part of the discussion, which we're not going to discuss, is does it really matter if he heard it versus not hearing it? Lamaisa, he didn't hear it and he wasn't meifir. Again, because if he was meifir and then the father died, then who cares? Once they're both meifir, it's too late, and that's it. It's meifir. But v'lo hispik Baal lishmoa at shemeis ha'av. So very nice. The father went ahead and he was meifir it. And in the equivalent case where the husband was meifir it, the father can go ahead and be meifir it, even if the husband now dies. But in this case, where the father is the one who's made for it, and then the Baal doesn't hear about it or is not made for it until the father actually dies, Zohi Sheshaninu, that's the case where he says that by the Av, Mesa Av, Lo Nitrokna Rishus Labal. That in that case, even though in the exactly identical case the father would be able to go ahead and be made for it, when it comes to a husband, unless the father was made for it and he's still alive at the time that the husband hears and is made for, then that's where we learn the difference, and the husband cannot actually go ahead and be made for it anymore. Shama Bala, case number 3. Another case where the transfers to the father and the father can actually be mefer it. Shama Bala v'heferla, as we mentioned before, the Baal heard and he was mefer. V'lo hispik ha'av lishmoa at shemeis ha'Baal. And now the Av did not hear until the Baal died. Zoe sheshaninu meis ha'Baal nitrokna rishus ha'av. What's the difference here? So seemingly over here, this is just adding that even in the case where the Av did not hear about it before the Baal died, Shama Bala v'hefirla. V'lo hispik Av lishmoa at shemeis ha'Baal. According to the first case, it seemingly was a case where the Baal was meifir. The Av heard about it, then the Baal died, then the father can still be meifir. But in this case, Shama Bala v'hefirla. V'lo hispik Av lishmoa at shemeis ha'Baal. This is adding that even if the father doesn't hear about it until the Baal dies, Zoe sheshaninu meis ha'Baal nitrokna rishus ha'av. Even in this case, where the husband went ahead and he was meifir it, and now the father didn't even hear about anything until the Baal was dead. We already learned that if he had heard about it but he wasn't made for it, then he can be made for it. But even if he didn't hear about it until the Baal died, we still give the father the power to go ahead and to be made for the neder. Case number 4. Shama Ba'ala v'hefirla. The husband heard and he revoked. V'lo hispik ha'av lishmoa at shemeis. And the father, not only did he not be made for it when he heard about it, he didn't even hear about it. So in the equivalent case where the father was made for it and then the Baal didn't hear about it, so then the father can be made for it. But where the husband was made for, he already did his job. And now the Av Lamaisa just hasn't heard about it and now he dies. Ein ha-Baal yachol ha-hefer, she'ein ha-Baal mefer ela b'shutfus. Again, that the Baal does not have the same power that the husband has. And if the husband, even if the husband revoked, and now the father dies without hearing about the vow, so now the right to revoke does not transferred to the husband. And the final case for the day is Shama Avia Vehefirla. The father heard and he revoked. V'lo hispik haBaal lishmoa ad shemes. And the Baal never even heard it. So forget about the fact that the Baal heard it. The Baal heard it and then he dies, so then the father seemingly can do it. V'lo hispik haBaal lishmoa ad shemes. So now the Baal never even heard about it. Chozer ha'av u'meker chelko shel Baal. We'll have to again see when we do right in the Gemara. You have to see if this is really different than case number 1. Chozer ha'av u'mefer chelko shel Baal. If the father hears about it and he's mefer, and the Baal doesn't even hear about it until he dies, so chozer ha'av u'mefer chelko shel Baal. So the av can still go ahead and be mefer the chelko of the Baal. Omer of Nasan Heinei Divrei Beit Shammai. However, Beis Hillel Omer Mein Yochel Lahafer. Beis Hillel says that if the father revoked and the husband died without hearing about the vow, then there's a machlokas Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel whether there's an ability of the father to now go ahead and to revoke the vow. Again, it's very good to see the chart that's set up in the art scroll on the bottom over there. Have a wonderful Shabbos.